Okay, so thanks everybody for joining on our second town hall listening session. We'll kind of do a quick recap of the first one, and Kayleen will give you a description of kind of like what's been happening since then. For introductions, my name is Jesse Applegate. I'm the current Executive Council President, and Kayleen Deathridge is our interim executive director, and she'll be presenting to you today. For the format, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them. And we'll take a transcript of the chat, and also we're recording this meeting for review afterwards. So with that, I will hand it off to Kayleen.
Thanks, Jesse. I just want to take a quick moment after telling you all hello and thank you for giving up your Monday evening to join us and talk about where we are taking the Mazamas together to help set you up for the future. I just want to give a shout out to the board. I'm really enjoying working with this board of directors. You've got some really great leaders that care very passionately about the Mazamas. And it's not just the board. Every one of you that I talk to is very passionate about articulating your care for this organization. And so it's really my privilege to get to help you think about how to keep yourselves as viable and successful for the next 127 years as you have been for the 127 years that you've already traveled. So tonight, our goal is to continue sort of providing you information about nonprofit governance structure. So really kind of best practices that crazy people like me who make their profession out of leading nonprofits, the information and the data and the resources that we use to help give nonprofits our best advice about how to set themselves up with a good governance structure that is realistic and nimble to maintain, and that helps nonprofits to be economically viable, to recruit new members, to recruit new donors. So what our conversation is not about is changing fundamentally who the Mazamas are in terms of membership or mission, but it is very much about looking at the structure that you use to govern and manage the organization. And I'd like to make the suggestion that there are some changes you could make to that would make it easier for you to have future success while maintaining the importance of your mission and the importance of the member connection to the Mazamas. So I'll dive in and share out some information, and then we can talk some more about where these ideas might take us. Assuming that, yeah, cool. All right, so I need to make a couple quick moves here so I can see the slides. Okay, so the recap is really just to let those of you who were not on our first listening session know where we are and where we've been. So in December, the board of directors hired a consultant, one of my colleagues at Page 2 Partners, to do an assessment of the current state of the organization. And we talked about that at the last town hall meeting. That work led to 11 recommendations, all of which were pointed towards helping you be more effective from a governance and management and fiscal standpoint as an organization. And all of those 11 recommendations really point to one reality, that the governance structure that you have right now is inhibiting your ability to be sustainable and viable in the future. And in order to protect the culture and the membership ethos that really is fundamentally who the Mazamas is, it's time to make some changes to help better align the structure of your nonprofit with current Oregon statute and with the best practices that I and other nonprofit leaders have learned and worked with over the years to help nonprofits really function at peak optimal effectiveness. So of those 11 recommendations, which we talked about in detail at the last session, the board has really prioritized 5 of them. So think of this work in phases. The first phase is going to be to tackle the 5 that you see here on the screen. Finance and budget. I have had enthusiastic response from many of you since the last call saying, yes, we need to take care of our finance and budget reality. Focus on fundraising and develop new revenue sources. Clearly, just having financial solvency is not enough. You have to have a pathway to raise funds in the future as robustly as possible so that you can maximize the organization's ability to carry out its mission and to offer programs that get people out in the mountains and get them climbing. Improving communications. You, like so many organizations, several of you know that I work a lot with the Boy Scouts with my volunteer energies, and just like the Mazamas, we have members that are 20 and we have members that are 90. Generally speaking, the 20-year-olds and the 90-year-olds don't rely on the same communication channels. And yet an organization like the Boy Scouts or the Mazamas needs to effectively use all of those channels because different members get their information in different ways. So we recognize that there's room for improvement there, and we need to continue thinking about how to get you all information as quickly and as effectively as possible. Bylaw revisions. That is the piece that we'll focus on the most tonight. And those are revisions, again, focused on our managerial and our governance structure. Not tonight so much about how we define membership or about changing membership, but really about how we govern. And then last, and this is something I've heard from a lot of you, whether I'm talking to a board member, of committee chair, a volunteer, a staff member, there seems to be some confusion about role clarity. Hopefully, as we work on the 4 bullets that I've just covered, those will help us with role clarity. But clearly, as you move forward, making sure everybody understands what their role is in the organization and how to carry it out as effectively as possible is going to be important to everybody having a good experience being a member of the Mazamas and to making sure that you're carrying out your mission. Okay, so let's talk briefly about what we've done since we met at the beginning of April. We, that is Kayleen and the board and Susan Matlock-Jones, our external bookkeeping service, are, I would say, what do you think, Jesse, up to our elbows or our armpits in working to improve the quality of the information that we're getting in our monthly financial statements. Those of you that need to rely on those statements to make decisions about the Mazamas can't do that if that information in those reports isn't timely, if it doesn't provide you comparison data so that you understand what you're looking at and you can use it to inform decision making. So that's important. We also want to take a look at our budgeting process. We'll see what the body language is of those of you on the call, but I've heard from a lot of you that budgeting with the Mazamas is complicated, and maybe some people wondering if it's overly complicated and if it could be simplified to still get a good result, but to make it a little bit easier for everybody to see how our budget comes together, for there to be budget transparency, and for different people working in different committees to not only understand the budget as it pertains to their committee, but to understand the overall budget, which of course has a direct connection to the overall financial health of the Mazamas. So we've got some room for improvement there, and we're heavily engaged in that right now. And clearly, as we hit hard on at the last session, you have a fairly sizable deficit right now, and we need to chart a path, a realistic path to overcoming that. It is our intent, and we'll stay in clear communication with you if we feel that we need to course correct. But our desire is to pass a budget for the 2022-23 fiscal year that gets us back to net zero, so that you have overcome the deficit by the time you're sitting at September 30, 2023. And if we begin to realize that that time frame is too ambitious, then we'll have that conversation with you and we'll make some suggestions about how we can course correct. Super excited to have Gina Benole on our call tonight. Gina is our Office and Communications Coordinator. I had the opportunity to bring her onto your team a little more than a month ago. She has a terrific background in journalism, in communications consulting. She's worked with a number of companies and organizations to help them plan PR campaigns, branding, and how to maximize communication. She is she's a great resource. If you have not met her yet, I encourage you to introduce yourself to her. She's friendly and eager to help and has a lot of good energy. So we're super excited about having her skills on our team. And then we also have been talking a lot. As much as we've been talking about budget and finances, we've been talking about governance structure and are well aware of the bylaw process last year and how complicated that became and the strong emotions that it created. And we're just trying to be as absolutely transparent and frank with all of you, our members, as we can be. And I see that as my role. You brought me on to help give you the benefit of my experience and best thinking. And that's exactly what I intend to do, because I think you're a pretty cool organization and I would really love to see you thrive for years to come. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about nonprofit governance structures. If you've seen the article that I wrote in the last, in the bulletin that just came out, it's probably all the conversation, all the, all the confirmation that you need that I'm a total nonprofit geek, because I love this stuff in terms of how do we set up structures that really help organizations to thrive. What I want to do tonight is compare and contrast two different kinds of nonprofit membership structures. The Mazamas are a formal membership organization. That means that the bylaws they describe who can join, what rights and privileges those members have, and it gives the responsibility for making governance decisions to that voting body. So in order for most of the managerial and governance functions that a nonprofit needs to carry out to occur, changes, both mundane and significant, have to be voted on by the entire membership, or at least those that choose to participate in an election. In an informal membership organization, and I use the Oregon Public Broadcasting in my article as an example, they also have members. Their members are fundamental to who Oregon Public Broadcasting is, just as your members are at Mazama's. The difference is those members are not the governing body of the organization. So they have the same types of rights and privileges that you all have as members. They simply don't have the governance responsibility of the organization. They've delegated that responsibility to their board of directors and to their executive director to assess the situation, look at the options, and make the most informed decision about how to guide the nonprofit forward. So again, with respect to membership, in a formal organization, those qualifications and rights are spelled out, and the members oversee governance. In an informal membership organization, membership is really often a function of fundraising. So their membership is how they engage their donors. It's how they engage the people that are passionate about the mission. It's how they give them access to the organization's services. But it is often also tied to a way to generate and encourage giving. You know, a lot of organizations provide certain member benefits at certain levels of giving, and there's some prestige and status that's connected with saying, hey, I'm a platinum member of the Oregon Public Broadcasting, nonprofit, and that means I'm writing a check of at least $10,000 a year, or whatever that level is. But there is ownership and buy-in to membership in informal membership organizations, just like there is in a formal one. In a formal organization, the board members can only come from the active membership, and the membership, as you know, has to elect those board members. In an informal membership organization, board members can be sourced from the community at large. Some organizations, like the one that I was the ED of for 10 years, the Mount Hood Kiwanis Camp, its bylaws stipulated a blend. So a certain percentage of the board needed to come from Kiwanis membership, and a certain percentage of the board could come from the community at large. And that allowed them to maintain the importance of having active organizational members on the board, but it also gave them the flexibility to go out into the community at large and acquire certain skill sets that the board thought would help them to carry out good governance of the organization. So that's another possibility that you might consider down the road. In a formal membership organization, the bylaws specify when annual meetings are held, and they specify the process for voting. In an informal membership organization, the board, there is still an annual meeting. The bylaws still require it, but the board generally determines when and where that meeting happens. And the meeting is about updates or maybe the ratification of the broadest scope of the organization, but not the direct election of members of the board. That function in informal membership organizations usually rests within the board. So they are cultivating and they are vetting through the membership, but ultimately voting on as a board who becomes a member of the board. Other considerations, just to keep in mind, that the more membership organizations are more complex. There are 2,700 of you that are members of the Mazamas. To carry out an election, we have to do our best to inform and engage all 2,700 members. You know, in my experience, 25 years of working with boards, I'll say that as an executive director, it takes a lot of time and energy to keep your 9 or 15 or 23 person board fully apprised of what's happening and all of the factors that need to be considered for decision making. It's a little overwhelming to imagine how to effectively provide that level of understanding to 2,700 people such that they can make a truly informed vote. So it's just something that you have to be aware of. It makes administration of the organization quite a bit more complex. You know, the note here, the bullet says formal membership organizations are less stable overall. Part of the reason why is because you usually don't get as much voting participation as you would like. You know, if 70 or 80% of your members were always voting, you would be pretty confident that you were getting a cross section of membership opinion. But often in formal membership organizations, just like in, you know, politics in our country, a very small subset of people are voting. And if that group of people comes together as a block and wants to effect a change, they might be able to push through the organization some type of a decision that really doesn't have the support of the full membership, but they were effective at using the electoral process to their advantage. And that's why it can sometimes be destabilizing. So just a way to kind of give you an opportunity to look at the difference. Neither approach or neither structure is right or wrong per se, but there are pros and cons that go with both. And you have to think about what's going to help serve you best at this moment in the Mazama's life cycle. Okay. So I want to just talk a little bit about a couple of structures that other nonprofits, I mean, that are out there and the work that they've done. I meant to grab a link to put it in the chat. I'm going to start with the Appalachian Mountaineering Club. Jesse shared with me a while back an article that the Harvard Business Review prepared about the Appalachian Mountaineering Club. You guys, honestly, if every place that it said AMC, you erased that and wrote Mazamas, the story would be almost identical. I was blown away when I read it, just as Jesse thought I would be, by the absolute similarities between their organization and yours. And it was really interesting to read from Harvard's perspective. You know, when they began to talk about changing their management and governance structure, they had many of the same concerns that it sounds like you all experienced last year. You know, worries about whether or not this would fundamentally change the identity of their club and whether or not it would be taking power to set culture and programmatic priorities away from the members. The good news is after going through the difficult path of making the decision to make that change, it did not result in them having the types of outcomes that they were afraid of. In fact, after 6 years after they made the change, They found that they had a more engaged board of directors than they've ever had. Their executive director was working in sync and in alignment with the board and the membership and really helping to deliver. They erased their debt, they doubled their membership, and they tripled their endowment. All things that I'm sure would be very exciting if they happened in the future for Mazama. So I'll talk with Gina tomorrow and we will figure out where we can put the link to that article. It's lengthy, it's 25 pages, but even if you only skim it, I think that it might be very encouraging because you'll see a lot of similarities and their story has a happy ending. And I think yours could too. So I also want to talk about Audubon Portland. So most of us know it as the Audubon Society. It was founded in 1902. I'm sure many of you know that many of the people that helped to found the Mazamas were also involved in founding the Audubon. They have had a governance structure until 2019 that looked extremely similar to yours. Their bylaws were very similar in how they were written. They too were membership based and their governance was delegated across their membership. They did a lot of surveying. You know, they have 10,000 members. They did a lot of surveying and what they found is that the community perceived them as exclusive and not as an organization that had something to offer everybody in the greater Portland community. With that in mind, they began to look at how to rebrand themselves and how to restate their bylaws. You guys may not be looking at a rebranding, that may not be necessary, but they were effective in changing their governance structure to provide a little more latitude to their board and to their ED to handle the governance side. The really cool outcome for the Audubon is that they completed that process in 2019, 2020. They turned around and embarked on a capital campaign to rebuild their wildlife care center. That's right there at the Audubon for those of you that have been there. And they raised $4 million. They raised almost $1 million more than they set out to raise. And now have the wonderful problem of deciding how to spend that with wisdom and use that to secure their future. So they too had a good outcome, although they also had to work hard to help everybody understand what their goals were and to support them in making those changes. And then the last one I'll talk about, I could talk about all night long because this is my volunteer world. But I put the Boy Scouts in because part of what they made in they made the decision in 2017, they executed it in 2018 and 2019, but they made a membership standards change. And the Boy Scouts by title, right, has always been an organization that served boys. But when it was founded in 1910, culturally, boys were out camping and climbing and doing things like that at a much greater degree than girls were. It just was cultural that those types of activities were more in the recreational desires of men than women. But that has changed over time. And in the beginning of scouting, not only girls were not permitted, but women or mothers really only had the opportunity to serve as a den mother. So some of the other leadership roles in scouting, board leadership, committee leadership, national decision-making across the organization, those roles were all held by men. They began to let girls join a couple of their less prominent programs in the 70s. But by the early 2000s, families were really crying for the ability to scout together. Parents didn't want to have to take their kids in two different directions. And it was beginning to be rather glaring that boys had the opportunity to scout and take advantage of the outdoor learning and leadership growth. And girls were not getting that opportunity. Surveying of the membership showed that families were really supportive of their sons and daughters being able to join the same organization. But I can't tell you how many calls I was on where I heard longtime Boy Scout leaders say, you're going to kill the Boy Scouts. You let girls in, the Boy Scouts will never be the same. You know, you're going to ruin this organization if you open it up to girls. It hasn't been the outcome, you guys. We've had over 1,000 girls eagled in the inaugural Eagle class of 2019. There are tens of thousands of girls across the country that have joined Scouting and that are pursuing the rank advancement opportunities that are available. And families are giving us really great feedback that this is what they wanted. And we have families joining us that in the past chose not to because it was just too complicated to have their sons and daughters needing to go in different directions for their recreational opportunities. And so parents, chose other organizations where the whole family could participate together. So I shared those with you because I think, I want you to recognize that the decisions that you're thinking about making are not unique. A lot of other organizations have also faced this moment in their life cycle where they need to think about what's going to help us be most effective in managing our organization moving forward, and how do we honor our legacy but claim our future. Sometimes I describe it as you need a rear view mirror because your history defines who you are and it should inform your priorities and your mission moving forward. But you need a much bigger windshield because you've got to be envisioning, how do we remain effective for the future? How do we make sure that we protect our mission and our culture, and we set ourselves up to deliver our program to as many people as we possibly can? So let's talk for a minute about what we are talking about changing. And I say talking about changing because that's what this is. There isn't a decision that's been made, but these conversations are driving us towards a recommendation. Clearly, this organization, like so many others, is absolutely dependent upon its membership. You're the core of how the programs of the Mazamas are both created and delivered. The membership identity and the belief that members benefit from the Mazamas by learning to climb or learning to participate in mountaineering activity, and then you go out and teach others how to do that. In the short time I've been with you, it's so clear what a central tenet of your mission that is. So your volunteers are your heartbeat. This is not a conversation about getting rid of members. It's not a conversation about taking the culture that you as the members have set for the organization and turning those decisions over to someone else. It is about how you can change your bylaws so that your legal concept of membership is more in alignment with how Oregon statute is written. Oregon statute that governs nonprofits provides a pathway for nonprofits to have members with all the rights and privileges that go with membership, but to give those organizations the ability to be governed and administered without needing to have a vote of the entire membership body in order to make small administrative changes. So that's really what we're talking about here, is how do we protect your culture, but give you more structural flexibility so that you can continue to be successful as you move forward. So why is it needed? I'm repeating myself a little bit, but I think it bears repeating. It's going to help you be more nimble and flexible in your management and operation. It's going to relieve the organization of trying to keep 2,700 members fully up to speed sufficiently to make informed choices about even mundane governance and oversight matters. And it empowers your executive director and your board, whom ultimately are accountable to every one of you, to help to make those decisions. And you get to hold them accountable for making sure that they stay up to speed on what is happening in the nonprofit sector, and that they are fully aware of how to position the Mazamas to be effective and efficient. I think the last bullet is one that I put a little note at the bottom of. So this change is needed so that you can elect the best, most qualified individuals to your board. Clearly, you don't want somebody serving on the Mazama's board who's not passionate about your mission, who doesn't care about climbing and protecting the mountains. Let's just say that's a given. Nobody would be voted onto your board that doesn't bring that quality. But besides that, there's a number of areas of experience and knowledge that are really beneficial to have on your board. Those may exist upon amongst your membership, but there may be some people out there who are not currently a member, but who have great expertise and great interest in what you do and could be a really good asset to you. Right now, you don't have a way to include those individuals in the oversight of the organization, but a governance change would give you more flexibility to consider that. The other thing I think is important here, deciding to change that legal concept around membership and governance does not mean that now you're going to go, you're going to hire 15 staff. I fully recognize that over the last decade, I think with every good intent and with belief that it would result in growth, your organization did hire a number of staff. I don't necessarily think that that was a bad decision, but I fully acknowledge that it did not net the results that you were looking for. You didn't see the membership growth that you were hoping for. And it, more staff does mean that you spend resources more quickly. So this is not a plug for swelling your staff, but it is very much about making sure that your staff and your board of directors have the authority and the capacity that they need to carry out effective administration. And it will be up to the board working with the ED to make sure that the staff is right sized to the size of the organization. And I think you're all very sensitive to that right now. It's something that I've talked with a number of you about, and I think it's wise that you think carefully about what's the staffing structure that supports the organization's goals. So benefits of making the changes. I talked already about the challenge of trying to keep all of your voting members adequately engaged and informed such that they can make the really fundamental decisions about your future effectively and with all the knowledge that they need in order to weigh in on those matters. I think to remain viable, so financially viable and operationally viable, to attract new members, which you need. At your height in 2017, you had 4,000 members. Now you're at 2,700. I'm sure we can all agree that some of that is due to COVID, but some of that is due to people getting their needs for opportunities to climb or be a part of a mountaineering organization. They're getting those needs met other places. And we want to try to give you the most potential possible to attract those people to join your organization and contribute their time, talent, and treasure to the Mazamas. And then lastly, a lot of modern day nonprofits, and modern day doesn't mean they're brand new. It's modern day, the Audubon and the Appalachian Mountaineering Club and Boy Scouts and many others, Kiwanis and Rotary and Elks, a lot of them had bylaws that read very similar to yours. And they've revised those over time to make sure that they, again, have the best structure to delegate and deal with their administrative, financial, and management tasks and keep their organizational volunteers focused on the mission, focused on program delivery. So one more slide, and then we'll look at what we've got in the chat. So one thing is really clear to me and exciting, and it's part of why I was so honored to be given the privilege of working with you all right now. This organization is a powerful one with members who are engaged. There are nonprofits out there where the staff and the board do most of the work because the membership is not necessarily fully engaged on a regular basis with the mission. That's not the case here. I have so enjoyed meeting so many of you who have come in, taken the time to share your thoughts. So Mazama's is its members. You are the lifeblood and the heartbeat. And the structural adjustments that we want to talk further with you about and ask you to consider are about making sure that you can stay healthy as a nonprofit. But it's, in my opinion, even more about getting the governance and the operational oversight functions delegated to the people that have the experience and the bandwidth to manage them, and letting you, our members, be focused on the outdoors, to be focused on, what is the next climb offering? How do we put more climbs on the calendar? How do we effectively attract and retain more climb leaders? What's the next event that we need to hold? There are so many programmatic mission delivery questions that the membership of this organization are best suited to answer. And it seems to me that that's where we want to give you the opportunity to put your time and your energy. And by redelegating some of the governance work, I think you have more bandwidth to do that, but still get to have confidence that your organization is being governed in a way that you can be proud of and work in alignment with. So I'm gonna leave it there for a second. I think we have a poll question for you in a minute, but before we get there, I'm looking at my clock. It's about 10 minutes after 7, so we have about 20 minutes. I have not been monitoring the chat because I've been talking, but Gina or Jesse, do you want to throw any chat comments out that we can respond to?
Sure. We have one, the most recent one from, let's see, not the most recent, or they're coming from Craig Allison. He's asking, can you provide more specifics about the Oregon statutes that we have to be concerned about or be more in alignment with?
That's a really good question, and I'll get out over my skis super fast if I start trying to speak about the complexities of Oregon statute. But I will make you this commitment. I will gather the statutes that govern nonprofits, at least the parts of you guys don't want it all. It's, you know, it's legalese, right? So it's hundreds and hundreds of pages, but I will pull together the most salient points and share those out as follow-up to this so that you can start to appreciate those nuances. I will share related to that one of the things that we have done. So some of you may know this, my husband is an attorney, and so Greg on our board also works in the legal field as a paralegal, and so we've got access to some really good people who have experience in the nonprofit sector. And I had the opportunity to have a conversation with a woman who has done about 20 years of nonprofit governance work and has helped a number of organizations at a point in time like you all face, where you're adjusting your membership governance structure. And she was really the one who encouraged us to make sure that we were in alignment with state statute. But she also talked about the importance of the work that she does in terms of making sure that when you make those bylaws adjustments, that you protect your culture and protect your membership, while also taking care of positioning yourself to be in alignment, you know, with your state's nonprofit laws. So we've got some good people consulting with us and very much trying to help us make sure that we thread the needle and only change what pertains to our legal structure, but don't affect our culture.
And then we have another one of the issues I see in this potential change to an informal structure is that members have no input into governance, and governance lies with the board.
You know, I think any healthy nonprofit is constantly having a conversation with its membership. So I'll give you an example. Let's go back to the Boy Scout model. So when that decision was made to admit girls to become full members of the Boy Scouts, they could join Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts. The full, 2 million people that are members of the Boy Scouts of America did not have a vote on that. The 70-member board of directors that governs the entire national organization were the only 70 people that got to vote on that membership change. But I want you guys to know there was a decade of conversation before that happened. You guys cannot take a decade. but my point is, the organization would have been absolutely foolish for the board to vote on that kind of a change without having been in conversation with its membership. There could have been revolt. A lot of people might have given up, not renewed their children in the program, closed down their units and walked away if they had felt like that organization had made that change without consulting with the membership. So I guess what I would offer to you is it doesn't require that every member has to have a vote to hold the organization accountable for working in alignment with the will and the opinion of its membership. And I can't imagine that any board made up of all of you would not want to be passing governance changes that had the support of a majority of the membership.
Okay, and it looks like a few, at least a couple of folks are a little worried about the dilution of our message. They're bringing in our motto, "We climb high," and
Or at least you can have some free speech here. I mean, like, seriously. I mean, I'm gonna be polite, but yes, we don't like the change of this message of our logo, but I think there's more than one thing that's a little aggravating here. But of course, I'm gonna be polite, and once you're ready for alternate messages, please let me know.
okay. Well, I hope we're all polite here. We all are trying to do what's best for the Mazamas. We might not agree.
Yeah, Wayne, I'd ask you to keep it civil on this call. You know, your comments
totally.
in
I'm
the
gonna
chat
keep
have been
I'm gonna keep it civil.
okay. Your comments in the chat have been distraction from the thread of the conversation. So, you know, just please consider you have a broader audience here.
Yes, everybody is a club member. Hopefully, the change in the logo from "We Climb High" to "For the Love of the Mountains" is a little bit interesting, and you know, to put that into the presentation is kind of I think a interesting aspect to put into this. So, but anyways, please go on.
So Gina, what do we see next?
Let's see. Let's see. That was kind of the gist of it. We got a little lost in the weeds about the mission and the motto. And let's see, how do members in this potential new structure hold the board accountable other than sending input to board member and leaving the organization?
I think again, you get out of a nonprofit organization what you put into it. So those individuals that are interested in how the organization is making decisions about priorities and spending, the board is accountable to all of you. The board is not a body that gets to operate in isolation from the membership. And I think that part of this comes down to trust. And I recognize that, you know, from stories I've heard, I know that there have been some points along the way where people have been frustrated with decision making. One of the ways you get to vote is with your feet. And those of you that, if you choose not to renew membership or stay involved, that is one way to send a very clear message that you're dissatisfied. But absent getting to that point, or before you get to that point, I would certainly encourage anybody with concerns to come and talk to your executive director, to come and talk to your board chair, to talk to the person on the board that you know. If those individuals are not receptive to you, that speaks to a bigger problem in the organization. And I want to be clear, being receptive doesn't always mean that everybody agrees, but the ability to engage in a respectful conversation and hear differing opinions and recognize that we collectively are Mazamas. No one of you, or no board, or no ED is the Mazamas. You're only as strong as your ability to chart a path forward together. And so it's really important, you know, that dialogue take place. And I recognize that right now that's sort of codified into your structure. So it may feel scary that if you change that, somehow that fundamental right or dialogue goes away. I can give you my experience from other nonprofits. Of the half dozen or so that I have worked closely with, none of them have had a formal membership structure. So every one of them has been that informal structure where the board has oversight of governance. And I can tell you on a regular basis, just as regularly as I've been speaking with all of you the last 4 months, I was having conversations with members who were sharing their priorities and sharing their thinking. So I didn't have a different experience of governance in an informal membership organization. And my instinct tells me that things aren't really going to change very much. Making this change is not going to make your daily experience being a member of the Mazamas fundamentally different. Although I respect that it feels like a big change, you may see if you make it that it doesn't change nearly as much as you think.
Okay. And another question is, why not amend the bylaws to provide the board with more flexibility and decision-making authority, but still to retain the right of members to elect the board and to require that the board be made up of members?
Well, you know what, that is one option. I mean, I think that's exactly what we are exploring. So I think what will have to happen next, and perhaps if the general feeling amongst our membership is that we want to move forward and look at how we might amend our bylaws to make ourselves more sustainable moving forward, then the next decision is, okay, which changes do we make? One way to approach this would be to empower the board along with myself to work on some proposed amendments to our bylaws and then bring those back for additional conversation. I think how we empower the board and your executive director to make more real-time course corrections to respond to this really rapidly changing environment we live in, while also making sure that the membership feels comfortable, that we're all working in alignment. That's kind of the crux of it, right? That's what we've got to figure out. And I think that's also where getting some consultation, like from the attorney that we've been speaking with, who has a lot of experience in this realm, might help us look at how other nonprofits have addressed that challenge and what changes they've made to help accomplish their objectives.
Okay. If we move to this path, could the structure still involve members voting and board members?
It could. I mean, I think that there are a lot of different ways that you can amend. So yes, there is a path where members would still vote on the entire board if that was important. I would encourage you to think that the things about your current board makeup, if I just had a magic wand, if I was empowered to make this decision for you, which I am not, but if I was, things that I would really recommend that you change. You have a 3-year board member term. Your board officers really only have a 1-year term. I currently serve as a board chair. I'm in the role that Jesse has on the local Boy Scout board. That's a 3-year role as board president. A year to learn it, a year to do it, and a year to turn it over to the next person. So I just completed my first year. It's hard for me to imagine if I was done, because I just now feel like I'm able to start helping to see the projects that I've undertaken through to fruition. So I think you need to deal with your board terms. Right now, you have a really hard time getting people to run for your board. That's an interesting problem to have. You know, as much passion as you all have for the Mazamas, the nominating committee just spoke with me last week and said, Kayleen, we don't have anybody, or maybe we have one person that's interested in running. That's rough, right? You're not getting the opportunity to really vet people for the best fit for the board. You seem to find yourselves more in a position of just being desperate to find people willing to do it. I would submit to you that is not the best way to choose members. You really need to be looking, you know, not just at their commitment to your passion, but their appropriateness and their experience, their skill set, their community connections, their network. Those are the assets that are so valuable on a board of directors. And right now, the board doesn't have any discretion to help cultivate and find those people to help them do their work. So maybe there's a happy medium in there somewhere. Maybe so many spots are member selected and so many spots are board selected. I think you could slice this a number of ways. I would encourage you to think more about what we're trying to accomplish, and then we can figure out the structure that'll help you get there.
Okay. And then there's, you know, people sort of affirming people leaving to walk dogs. Someone points out, looks like we only have about 2% of the members on this meeting, and I'm sure Kayleen can contribute, but yes, that is true. That's why this is recorded. If anyone wants the link again here to the first town hall session, they live on our YouTube channel. They've been shared widely in the bulletin, on social media, and they're also on our website. So, I think the goal is that we get, a broader,
Yeah.
swath of our membership involved, because for whatever reason, sometimes there's even been some of our programming that has conflicted with at least the first town hall meeting, and I think
Yeah.
possibly this one as well. So our goal is to gather as many voices and hear from as many of you all as possible. And if not in this format, then, via email or, phone
And-
calls, stopping in, however you want to respond.
And, and I would, Gina, you're exactly right. And I certainly, we're not holding this town hall with the assumption that we're getting all the input that we need just from the people that have joined us tonight. So I want to reassure everybody that this is a great place for us to get some input, but it's not the only place by any means. But I actually think the point made about
when are
there's
you gonna
only
get some
2% of
input?
the, just
When-
a
when are you
second,
gonna-
please.
when-
Just a second, please. So what I'd like to say is, with only 2% of your membership on the call, that speaks to exactly what I'm talking about. It's not easy to engage 100% or even 80 or 90% of a 2,700 person membership adequately to have all of those people bring their decision-making authority to the table in a timely and relevant way. So that's where the cumbersome piece comes from. It's not because those opinions are not valuable. They certainly are. This becomes logistical and practical. And I think that that's part of what you're facing. And as many people as you have that care about this organization, just our participation here shows us how hard it is in this day and age to engage an entire membership at one time.
Yeah, I'd rather reduce programs, but stay a climbing club.
Yeah, and I think those are the kind of discussions that it will be powerful for the membership to have. Those discussions that are about how you focus your program. I've seen some really good conversation about, should you really be focused primarily on climbing? Are the other alpine activities that you're engaged in an enhancement or a detraction? Those are good questions, and questions that you should have membership members of your organization get to weigh in on and think about. And,
Yeah.
and I would submit that's where you as members bring tremendous value to the organization.
Yeah. And again, I think people have said this a couple of times. I don't think the same people, but that Chris Brox is correct. We can amend the bylaws to provide some authority and flexibility to the board, but still retain some membership control and input. Is it legal for a nonprofit to have two divisions? One could focus on social causes and get grants. The other could be more of a traditional climbing club.
That's what it would probably mean is having like a 501c3 part of the organization and a 501c4, 5 or 6. So the part of the organization that was focused, the part of the organization that was focused on the social club aspect, that part wouldn't be tax deductible. You'd lose the 501c3 advantages because it's serving an exclusive group. But you could, with the 501c3 part of the organization, be community focused. So again, that there would be a lot of structure to work out there, but it's not impossible. All right. So Gina, why don't we, as we're just almost out of time tonight, why don't we put the poll question up and kind of see where people are? We want to ask you tonight if you are in favor of continuing the conversation about making changes. That's going to help us give a sense of where to go next. If you want to continue this conversation, then we need to bring you back some detailed change suggestions. And if not, then we may need to regroup and decide as an organization what that means and what your next steps need to look like. So I encourage everybody to go ahead and vote.
Yep. Poll is in progress. Okay. We're getting there. I was just going to encourage those. I was like, wait.
We are going to keep an FAQ happening on our website. Gina's working with members of the team to put a web page together. We'll use the blog there. I recognize it's really difficult with just an hour on this call to let everybody come off mute and talk. I also acknowledge that it's frustrating if you've got something to say and you feel like you didn't get to say it. So please engage with the forums that we're going to set up. Your opinions are incredibly important. This isn't a one-way conversation, or we wouldn't be taking the time to do this. So we'll do our best to provide you authentic ways to share. And I sincerely encourage and hope that you'll take advantage of those. Gina, how you doing on the poll results? Oh, there we go. All right. Are we able to share the results? I'm sorry, I'm not in control of the poll on this one.
Kayleen, while Gina is like getting the results together.
Wow.
Nice.
That's exciting, you guys. Go ahead, Amy. I'll save my comments until you make yours.
Just one like point I wanted to highlight that, you know, the Mazama is, while we started as an organization 125 plus years ago, specifically for climbing glaciated peaks, pretty quickly, like in the early 1900s, we started forming other parts of the organization that were focused outside of just summiting glaciated peaks, like the rambles, the hiking. I think at one point there was canoeing or something, like rafting. We have skiing and all these other areas. And so right now we're already serving a much larger community that is just, you know, folks that have summited glaciated peaks. And a lot of these people have expressed a lot of interest over the years of wanting to become members of this organization they're already a part of. And so I think that's something that for me is that we're already, you know, we already have these folks that are active and love this organization and have love for the mountains, but we're not allowing them to be a part of our mission. And I feel like that's a really unfortunate position to be in. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Amy. I think that's you know, a really excellent point, and it's part of why these are hard decisions. You know, that organizations have to evolve and change over time, otherwise they stagnate. But how to do that in a way that honors your legacy and stays true to your mission? There isn't a right and a wrong way to do that. There's just the way that helps an organization remain viable and keep as many of its members involved as possible. So I think we need to move very deliberately, but we do need to move. I guess the thing that I would say to all of you is I think the only choice you have, or maybe the only choice that you don't have, is to stay right where you are. And the reason you don't have that choice is that it will likely bring about your demise. You know, you're economically challenged. You're losing membership. So if you don't make an adjustment that gives yourself the opportunity to make a new route choice, you may find that you have to abort your climb. And that would be a tragic outcome, and one that you have every bit of ability to avoid. But it requires you to be engaged in these conversations to figure out what kind of changes to give yourself more options you can all feel positive about, and you can all collaborate with one another to achieve. And I'm so hopeful that in these coming months we can figure that out, and then help you guys bring on a new leader that can move you towards that future, along with the active involvement of every one of you, and many more that aren't with us tonight. So Jesse, do you want to say anything to wrap us up tonight before we wish everybody a good evening and thank them for their time?
That's pretty much it. I just wanted to say thanks everyone for participating, and looking forward to the next town hall.
Yeah, we will, it looks from this conversation and some others, like our next steps are going to be to start working on some details of changes and start socializing that with all of you. So we'll think about how to do that in the most effective way and how to get this in front of as many members as we can. If you have suggestions for us about how to do that, we're all ears, because the outcome is going to be the most effective if we give as many of our members the opportunity to help us know how they are thinking as possible. So we really do, this really is all of us. And I sure am grateful to all of you. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.